Danny, we are here at Charlotte for the Naroditsky Memorial. Have you been to Charlotte before? I'm sure you've been.
Yeah,
here.
many times. I was here in January last. That's the last time I played a chess tournament. So, yeah, been here many times though.
And I wanted to ask, get your thoughts on this. You know, Daniel Naroditsky is someone whom you knew very closely.
Yeah.
When was the first time you saw him or met him?
First time I saw Danya, he was very little, playing I think at the Mechanics Institute in San Francisco, and I told this story in the blog I wrote right after his passing, that he was literally a kid who had to be given like a booster chair or like a phone book to sit on, despite how good he was at chess. But the first real interaction I had with Danya, he must have been 9 or 10. It was at a tournament in Southern California, and my wife and I were there. We had actually just had a baby of our own, and so I was playing in a tournament with a baby, and Danya was there, his brother Alan was there, both his mom, Lena, and Vladimir were there, and so we happened to just sit next to each other in Agora Hills, and we had a fun dinner, and Danya was bright-eyed and big curly hair, as he always is, and he played with Nash, that's my baby, that's my oldest son. And it was great. It was funny because I will always remember Danya a little bit as just a bit of his face was just like curiosity, just like bright and just like, you know, so interested in everything. And to see me with a baby, I think was kind of funny for him. And my wife remembers that very well, as far as meeting him when he was little. So obviously we would go on to, you know, I knew Danya very well, right? Being on the West Coast, there were limited tournaments in the way that like the East Coast just had like a different kind of culture of more events. So, ironically, Danya and I think first played like our really serious first game at the World Open, which was, you know, on the East Coast in Philadelphia. I won, by the way, which Danya talked about often whenever we would stream together.
Was it a nice game?
It was a nice game. It was a long game too. It was like I was better in pushing, and then Danya had like defended and swindled forever, and so I was like almost 2,400. He was like 22 something at the time, and took forever to push. But eventually, I basically, you know, I old school like Russian grandmastered him. Like I like tricked him in a position that probably should have been held, but I tricked him and eventually won. So yeah. Wow. I think that's the only like classical FIDE rated game we ever played.
Oh, you played only that.
As far as classical FIDE, we played in blitz tournaments. Danya and I taught at a chess camp in Tucson. Robbie Adamson, who's here at the event, we taught at a chess camp together for years. That was probably where we really got to know each other and develop like a relationship as like friends, as like adults. When, you know, because I'm an old man, I'm much older than him. So before that, I always thought of him as like, you know, little. But that was where he was at Stanford. We would coach together. That was when I first kind of recruited him to start doing things for chess.com, which for anybody who doesn't know, Danya's first gig at chess.com was actually writing articles, because as brilliant as Danya was as a commentator and as a streamer, Danya's brilliance with the written word, like maybe surpassed by like nobody. If you want a pro tip to all of your followers, go check out just Google like any Daniel Naroditsky article, chess.com, just go down the archive. I think we actually put together a really cool kind of memorial sort of summary of all the stuff he had done.
I will find the link and put it.
You can find it. Yeah, we'll find it. But it's really great. And anyway, his article was just incredible.
He was also the youngest author in the chess world, right? He wrote a book when he was around 12 or 13.
Exactly. No, I think he published it before 14 or right around then. And but anyway, so that was when we first recruited him, was to write articles. And that was long before the streaming boom and all the things that would be coming ahead for all of us. But that was Danya's first gig, like officially for chess.com and in kind of the online chess world, yeah.
And then as you met him, what was it that stood out? Like first you met him, it was the curiosity.
Yeah.
And then later, what was it that you felt like, wow, this is really something that is very unique to him?
Danya was so special. Like, I know everyone knows that, and there was something about his, like, use the word energy, there was something about his spirit that had so many people feeling like they knew him when they didn't really know him. And I don't say that in like a bad way for people who felt that way. I'm saying there's a reason for that, because Danya just made himself so accessible, and his love for whatever he was doing was so genuine that you connect with people when you feel like they love what you love, right? You connect with people when you feel like they're genuinely doing what they were born to do, right? And I think there's something to that. We don't always know it. We don't always articulate or verbalize that that's the thing we love about someone. But I think the thing people loved about Danya is they felt that, like, it wasn't just that he was good at what he was doing. It was that he genuinely loved the subject matter of what he was doing. And so I'm giving that, preamble, I guess, a little bit before your answer is like, so what did I notice about him? I mean, to me, what I noticed, I think, was the thing that everyone else did, which was like, he was so good at what he did because of the life and the level that he committed himself to it. I feel kind of awkward saying this now, but like, the thing, I go back to him writing because I remember the thing was like, I was telling him I wanted him to replace Jeremy Silman. And I only feel awkward about it because Danya obviously did way more than just replace Jeremy Silman. But for those really OG fans of chess.com, Jeremy Silman also...
Well, Jeremy Silman, I loved the way he wrote.
Exactly. So everyone will see that as a great compliment, right? That Jeremy Silman was not only a brilliant author, wrote Reassess Your Chess, still a legendary book. Jeremy, I think his Essential Endgame books, by the way, pro tip for everyone, that's also a great series by Silman. Just 2 books, a blue and a pink one. Get Jeremy Silman's Essential Endgame course. Before he did the bigger endgame one, Jeremy was brilliant and funny, and just like people loved the way he like brought to life like things within the story about chess, right? Danya had the same gift, right? And so to me, the first thing I noticed about Danya, before the medium of communication changed from articles to streaming and then commentary, before like the platform got bigger, anyone who read Danya's articles early on when we brought him on, because we were building the next generation of chess content creators, right? And Jeremy was like the OG original person we had, and then at some point Jeremy wanted to do less. And shout out to Greg Serper, by the way. I don't know why I just want to say that, because Greg's been with us forever, and like he's still crushing great articles. But it was like Jeremy and Greg, and there were some others. But we brought in Danya, and even when you were just reading what Danya wrote, you just felt how good he was at what he did, and you just loved it. So, again, like I had the amazing, fortunate pleasure to work with Danya in like every way, from like streaming to commentary to big shows, and so I could go on and on about all the ways that he was just awesome and hilarious and awkward in all the best ways, and like would push the pun farther than me. I'm the one who was known as like the cringy chess pun guy, and Danya would push it even farther. So all the things about working with him that were great, but I just keep going back to like where our relationship started, because I've known him since he was a little kid, and I saw him grow into this brilliant person long before streaming and commentary took over. So those things will always stick out to me as far as just remembering him. Yeah.
What's the story about chess puns?
Well, Danya, anyone who watches Danya's shows knows that he like makes puns. But what's funny is that was like a very much a feature, not a bug, of Danya's commentary. Is like not just his little like whoop, the whoop sounds he would make, but also he just was so like, he was so smart, and his vocabulary was so like vast that every chance he had to like slip a word in that was like Levy talked about this, an unnecessary word for the moment, but then once you hear it, it was like hilarious and brilliant, or like slip in like I said, like a pun that like was weird in a chess moment. When I was doing commentary early and videos, like that was like a thing that I was always trying to do, to just like make it a little bit more interesting than just kind of knight to d4 and this is brilliant, right? Like figuring out ways to bring humor and life into it, and Danya did that better than anybody. But what I was going to say is like that was actually a thing when we were recruiting, because Danny Rensch is getting old and not as good as a lot of other people at commentary these days, and so it was like 2021, 2022. We were like, we were bringing Danya in, and he and I joked that he was an upgrade in every way, because we're both named Daniel, except he's a GM, I'm an IM. Danya is a better name than Danny. He's better at commentary and better at awkward puns, so he checked every box. I was like, you check the awkward pun box, you check the GM title box, you check every other box. And so, Danya was the official face for as long as we could have him for all the things we were doing. Don't chip there, almost didn't want you to trip, that was close. Okay. But yeah, so he was amazing and all the things.
And when Danya was commentating, there was always this chess element which was very strong.
Yeah.
at the same time it would never get boring.
Yeah.
How was that? Did you ever speak about that? That okay, take care
Yeah.
of this aspect when you are talking. Don't make it too deep about chess, or was it something that came naturally to him?
We trusted him to do what he needed to do. It's funny because I think Danya, in his flow, when people just get out of the way and let him do it, he understood that mostly what you were trying to do was entertain and educate. So we called it edutain, right? You were trying to edutain and educate just over and over. But then you end up getting in big moments where players are just like, shocking you with their brilliance and how how quickly they make moves. And Danya he would always rise to the occasion, right? You watch like the Speed Chess Championship with him and Hess or him and Levy or whatever, right? The idea that Danya could just go in and out between edutaining, so fun, awkward jokes that also are educational around what's going on the board, but then also even in the moments that were bullet, where like, no matter what all the comments, in chat say, like 99% of humanity cannot follow what Hikaru and Magnus are doing on the board. And Danya wasn't pretending that he was going to translate that, but his excitement and his passion, right, and his love for what was happening was sort of like infectious, right? And so I think that was the key, is that sometimes it's like, I think commentary has to go in and out of the flow of what's happening in the game. If you overhype something that isn't hypeable, one, it's exhausting, and two, like it doesn't resonate as well. And if you are trying to slow down a moment when the players won't have any of it because the players are just going so fast, that doesn't work either. And so I think Danya just had a natural feel for what the moment needed, I guess, which I think is also hard to teach. Yeah, so that's what I would say.
Somehow I feel that, as you said before, everything in his life kind of revolved around chess, and he was so happy to be in the chess space that whatever he did, he would bring that into chess. Like maybe it was mimicry, it was his humor, it was his knowledge, but he wanted to connect it to chess.
Yeah.
And that showed in everything he did.
Agreed. And he did. He loved the game. It's hard to find or think of someone who loved the game in the way that Danya did. And yeah, I mean, that showed up. And so, yeah, the articles stuff, I think, is, reading, unfortunately, is not as popular as it once was in humanity or whatever, for better or worse, right? So the articles is a bit of a throwback along with his, mastering positional chess, and, some of that stuff is not as known as the popular thing that he did, but it shows up there. And if it can show up how passionate you are and how like much you're enjoying the subject matter, like I said, and how much humor and just sort of love you can bring into it, if it can show up in an article, and you can almost feel the person through the written word, I think that says something, right? In terms of just how genuine they were and what they put into the, into the stuff. And so, yeah, and then of course when he was on camera, anyone who watches the OG early world of chess streaming to then where it's gone, it's like you saw him just doing his thing. I'm also watching your brick. There you go. That was very nice. You avoided that pothole very well. That was strategic. You've done that. Did you get the pothole in there?
Yeah.
You showed it on camera, right?
I showed it.
You did? Okay. Nice. And you've done this before.
And when he decided to start his own Twitch and YouTube, did you speak with him?
Yeah.
What was like, because doing something that you love, but now suddenly having some of your own assets, like your own channel and stuff, requires extra work.
Yeah.
And so maybe that may have been not so interesting for him.
Yeah.
But he managed to keep it going. He was consistent. He did stuff there.
And he did it for the love of doing it. No, I mean, yes, I was there in the beginning. That was my job, and I think he told that story before. Convinced him to give it a try. In fact, the conversation I convinced him to give it a try was at the camp in Tucson that I talked about, the Western Invitational. And at the time, that was like, getting everyone to dive in, right? Other than the chess bras, almost no one was doing it early on, right? And then it was like convincing Hikaru and convincing Alexandra Botez and convincing Danya was like, and again, like that was partly just like helping people see that it was a lot easier than you thought to just turn on the camera and be you. And I think Danya embraced that more than like almost anybody, right? He really was never anything but just like who he was authentically, like on camera, and that was wonderful, and also something you connected with. And So yeah, no, I was part of helping convince him of that, but I say he did it for the passion because there were also times where Danya, like, you know, there were easy things to do to like increase your reach or grow your channel, or hey, this chess boom is coming, you know, let me make some suggestions on how to do more short form content. And Danya would always listen, and we had that relationship, but like, he really just wanted to like love chess and edutained, you know what I mean? And so there were times when like let's go this way, I don't want you to get hit by a car.
Okay.
There were times where like the business of growing your brand and profile were just not that interesting to him. And I say that, you know, and you know, to each their own, right?
How come that kind of a thing, right? When you're making something,
yeah,
you want more people to watch it, but you would never clickbait.
Exactly. Well, I think he had what he needed, which is a good, I don't know, it's like a fascinating lesson. Like, more is not always what you need to fulfill anything, right? More is not the answer to fulfillment. And yes, Danya would have said, in fact, at times that was kind of his personality. Like, he would go in spurts where, you know, you wouldn't hear from him for months, and then it would like be messaging you like, I'm gonna get all this together, I'm hiring an editor, Danny, I'm gonna listen to what you said about the affiliate, okay, we're gonna get the, you know. I think that, again, we're talking about someone in all their greatness who is also sadly not here, just to address the elephant in the room. I think Danya's personality was very like all in and like not necessarily interested in some of these other things, not because those things were bad. He also wanted those things. He wanted to grow his brand. He loved reaching more people. There was no part of him that didn't want that, but also when they didn't inherently fill his cup, they would naturally sort of be neglected kind of until he had to do them, right? And people have joked about that and talked about that, and I talked with his brother about that when we were at his service, that it was a wonderful part of his passionate personality that you knew you were getting all of him in the moment, and also it led to, at times, procrastination, just for lack of a better way to put it, of things that he knew he needed to do, right? And that was just, you sort of took the good with the bad in that sense, right? And then when he was ready, we did everything we could to help him for the things that he wanted to do, and then there were times when he didn't want to do it. So that was like, I guess what I'm saying is Danya jumped in, and the love that he had for what he was doing was what mattered most, because that was what the community will remember. That was what the community will always connect with, and that is what everyone should remember, because even if we will all be living in a sad world where we don't have Daniel Naroditsky reaching more people forever, the fact is he gave us everything he had while he was here.
Right.
And so that's the way I would think about it.
And also, as you said, he would always be able to reach people without even meeting them. So I was one of them. I hardly met him, but he had always such nice things to say. I spoke to Nihal yesterday when he won the Bullet Championship. He never won. He never met Nihal. But Nihal said he helped him to become a stronger player. So that's kind of an impact. It's not just that he was a presence online. Even in one-to-one communication, he was like able to make an impact.
100%. And I think Nihal's experience of that was like, he did, like, through the lens of chess was his tool, but really he loved connecting with people. He was also a teacher, he was an educator, right? And I think that we all have the different things we do that in some ways are just things, right? It's just a game, right? This is just a video, right? But really what you're doing is hopefully sharing something that is like making a connection, and people are relating to it at their own level of whatever. And Danya always wanted to reach people where they were, not ask them to be somewhere they're not. And that's what a teacher does. That's what an educator does, is like, let me figure out how I can package this in a way that is more palatable, or deliver the same message but with a different type of tact that someone can hear it, right? And Danya was so thoughtful about that, and he was brilliant. Like, literally, he was literally a fucking genius at communicating. That's really what it all came down to, whether it was articles, whether it was streaming, whether it was commentary, like, that's really what it is. And a communicator is like an educator in a lot of ways, right? And I think that he wouldn't have said he was a teacher or doing anything for Nihal, where I'm sure Danya would have said he was getting just as much out of any of those conversations or any kind of games, right? But I think he inherently showed up just as a student of life, and as a student of life who's that curious and loves what he does, he naturally is like bringing people into his space, connecting with them, and again, he was an educator. He just wanted to make sure people were becoming the best versions of themselves as chess players, right? Because again, whether it's chess or anything else, that's what a teacher is trying to do, is help people become the best versions of themselves. Chess was his thing, where he helped people become a better version of themselves, right? And I think that showed up in all the ways that it did. So
amazing. Lastly, I want to ask you that through all your interactions with Dania over the years, if there are a few things that you've learned from them and you want to give it as advice to the people watching this, that they could take these few pointers for their life through the things that you learned from Dania, what would it be?
Again, I would say Dania and I both always connected on not believing the world, or in some ways, I don't want to get too existential or philosophical, but at times there is a lie that tells people you have to do a job so that you can gather things and maybe one day you'll get to be who you are. It's like a do, have, be universe where do the thing, collect the things they tell you to collect, and one day you'll get to be who you are. And we were like, no. Like, who are you and what do you love? What do you have at your disposal? What are your talents? That everyone has something. Everyone has a thing to offer. And now what are you going to do with it? And Dania and I connected very early on building our universe through the thing that we loved, which was chess. So if you go back long ago, it was just I was obviously a little older. He was the better version of Danny in every way, a GM and the 2.0, all the things. But we always connected under the belief that you can live your life in a be, have, do way, which is who are you? What do you have? What are you going to do with it? Not do the thing, become a slave to the universe, gather things, and then one day ask yourself, what do you love? And I think Dania lived that as much as anybody that we saw. So I would just say that, hopefully that's a lesson for everybody, is connecting with that. And I will miss him for the example that he set, and for more ways than I can even say. And yeah, but I think that his life was an example of what I think, when it came to chess and what he gave to the community, from who he was, what he had to give, and what he did with it, is a great example. And I would be remiss to not just acknowledge that there's also an example that has left a little bit of you do always need to prioritize how you're doing and how you're feeling. And the truth is, that's a thing that that was hard to watch toward the end, as Dania was struggling in other areas that kind of have nothing to do with everything I just talked about in the good lane. And I think that there's also an example that I know Dania would want to say, because he knew he probably needed to do more for himself and how he was doing, and really taking the time to hit the pause button. And I think that that's a thing that everybody should see, is our world can be so demanding, and it can be so frontal lobe stimulating that you avoid the heart and the soul, and the things that you need to take care of and nourish. And I think there can be times where we all get caught up in things that are outside of ourselves and frankly don't matter, and things people say and things that the world does to kind of distract us from what really is important. And I think that there's an unfortunate lesson there, only unfortunate because he's not here, but also, something that I think we will all remember and learn from Dania's experience, because he was just so incredible and so great, and gave us so much while he was here, and we're never not going to wish we had more of it.
Thank you, Danny, for rolling together your years of interactions and experience with Daniel in this interview, and thank you for doing this.
Thanks for having me. Appreciate it.